The first topic I wanted to talk about is around user experience. And, while stability and performance is clearly priority number one, it's also super clear that we have a very important initiative to modernize our overall user experience across all different types of user roles, right? We started out focusing on the self-service area. Those basically, address the experience for employees in the company. By the way, it's not technically not just the self-service web UI, but also we, invest a lot in our MS Teams bot, in our chatbot experience, survey experience. I mean, every experience that the employees are interacting with from a system perspective, right? We basically looked at, and while we are largely wrapping this up, we continue to invest in this area as now that we transitioned and modernized the web UI, for example. We clearly also want to then add additional capabilities on top of it, right? Then the second, and that's a fairly diverse set of user roles, is around the ITSM analysts. We've done a little bit of that. I'll touch on that as part of the presentation. I started in some areas, but that's really the focus area for 2025. Has shifted towards the ITSM analyst role, right? And then last but not least, administrator UI. Yes, we are looking at that as well. But we typically do this on the fly as we're building out, capabilities for employees or analysts. At the same time, we often look at the corresponding administration UI for these areas and then try to modernize it at the same time. Again, what's extremely important to us that we do all this truly based on our platform concept. With the UI modernization, we don't want to lose any advantages that our Ivanti Neurons for ITSM platform delivers around tailorability, this extreme flexibility. We of course always have also in mind how, we can deliver additional value as part of the modernization, right? So if you're anyway modernizing and updating the UI, we are looking at certain interactions, how we can use this, how we can make users more productive, how we can increase the engagement and the compliance with certain policies. So while we're rebuilding it, we always take a good look at, can we deliver additional value at the same time? So as stated, for the self-service UI, with our new V3 version, that modernized, responsive web UI that we have delivered, we're getting close to the completion of this. Originally, the goal was to kind of finish this up in 24.4, but we'll still have some items to work on that we'll deliver as part of 25.2, that upcoming release in April. But I think we're fairly close now, and for certain, we want to encourage all of you to look at V3, to look at that new experience, because that's really our standard moving forward. And all the enhancements that we plan to deliver for request offering and for that self-service experience will really focus largely to deliver that on the V3 platform, so to speak. And so we do want to encourage everybody to look at it, evaluate it. The 24.4 version is at a point where it covers the majority of capabilities that previous versions of self-service had. Not everything. Again, we're still wrapping up a few items, but it is certainly a much more modern experience, a full responsive experience, a better accessible web UI that you can use across different form factors, right? At the same time, we also introduced, similar to my earlier point, introduced as well a new, layout builder experience for the self-service UI, a dedicated one for building out these kind of UIs in a very simple way. We do have some, new interesting capabilities. I do want to specifically highlight the search experience that is improved here. We have an additional locale support, including even, again, now a right to left oriented a screen with Arabic localization. So there are already some new things in there. But I would say by and large, our focus was so far to bring over the capabilities of V1 and V2 over to the new UI. So I hope you've all had a chance to, again, look at the UI here. In 24.4, we made a couple of enhancements visually here. You'll notice the rounded corners or the different way how the search bar looks like. We made some visual adjustments here in this UI here. Again, it is a fully responsive UI. So if you switch to a mobile screen here, you'll see that the UI can be used on a mobile device here. And that's why we use this card layer. And you can fairly easy then correspondingly request and navigate the environment. But let me switch back here to my original screen here. We did deliver integrations of this new UI with our chat service. That's number one here. So if you wanted to enable end users to do a live chat, right now I'm not logged in as an administrator, as an IT analyst. That's why nobody's here. But I think you get the idea that, we now have the option for end users to either launch a live chat interaction with a service desk agent, or you can embed a full, digital assistant here. Now, this works for our Ivanti Neurons digital assistant, that you can basically interact with a bot through a conversational UI. Or you can hook in your own ones. The integration, the way how you integrate it into UI, basically launches a URL, so you can even hook in your own ChatGPT option if you wanted to do that, or if you have some other tool here. Again, we generally approach this as a platform that is open, that other pieces can be integrated with, right? Other items that may not be so visible here is that we added more configuration options for the cards here, so that you can decide fairly flexibly what content you show on these cards here. All of this is fully configurable, what information you show here, what happens if you click on it. We added some, again, styling improvements around it. And then we also, in the background, support now pretty much all of the request offering parameter options. So there were, some gaps before 24.4, but I think as of that latest release, we support pretty much everything. Again, you of course have different options here. Look at the knowledge base, look at announcements. You have my items here. So again, the solution is pretty much fully built out by now, and we really want to encourage everybody to look at this, evaluate it, because that's clearly the path that we want to go down, and future enhancements that we plan during the course of 2025. We do plan to build specifically on this platform. On that note, a quick look ahead again, what we are planning to do here. So as I stated, 25.2, the release in April, we do plan to close some gaps that we still have specifically around classic form offerings where we had some limitations today. We're looking right now at implementing a fallback options, because we don't really have yet the full responsive Analyst UI that can display any form you may have built. For the self-service UI at this point in time, you may, again, at times have to fall back to the classic visualization, so to speak, in order to ensure that at least all forms can be rendered. Some of them will be rendered in the classic way, right? But as we are building out the Analyst UI, in the future, again, you'll be able to then, hook in these new designs that you built based on the new Analyst UI, right? We'll deliver accessibility improvements. We have some localization improvements in plan here. We got some feedback around alerts and how they're displayed. Today, they're largely showing up in the top right corner here. You can configure the system to show some alerts up here as an icon. But some customers, we got the feedback, wanted to see the full banner. And again, address some other items here around UX. So that is again what we plan around refinements for the self-service UI. But as I stated, we also plan to add new capabilities. For example, one of the top ideas in the community is around HTML parameters, and so we're looking at Q3 at that Q3 release, potentially Q4. To deliver some of these capabilities, right? But again, all of those will be specifically done based on the self-service V3 experience, right? Now, I mentioned that we, again, have shifted over the focus onto the Analyst UI. Technically, we've actually had made first steps around building components that are part of this future Analyst UI. One part is that new navigation experience that is even available today as part of 24.4, as part of this current release. We now generally support this new navigation behavior. And if you haven't seen, let me just quickly jump over to that. So again, this is something that's hidden behind a feature flag. So you'd have to reach out if you wanted to use this. To submit a SaaS ops request or submit or go through support. But once you have that enabled, the users, the analyst users to be specific, will see this toggle in the top navigation area. And they actually, because initially once you activate this feature, the UI will not change, so you'll continue to see that classic or the current navigation bar. But the one thing that the users will see is this toggle, and so each user individually can decide whether they want to switch on that new navigation. And as you can see, you can also go back here, right? That basically brings the same navigation content onto the screen, but in a vertical orientation. So the content that you see here is all metadata role driven, no different to what you saw before in the current navigation on the top bar. But it is visualized differently. You have an option to collapse it to get full use of the screen real estate. You see that there's actually more content shown here because we have the vertical orientation. You can actually show more entries in this navigation bar. And you have, similar to the more function, you have an option to search for entries, for those areas that are not part of the initial layout. You have the more workspaces button here, also a search function here. So again, content-wise, you basically reach the exact same areas as before. It's just a more modern, more consistent experience. If you think about the layout of many of the other Ivanti neuron solutions, they use a very similar navigation. And so one goal of it was not just to modernize the display, but also to introduce more consistency to other tools, right? Again, some of the items up here, like changing roles, again, the visualization has changed, but the functionality by and large is similar. It's just the navigation is a little bit different, right? And by the way, again, if you have multiple products enabled in your environment, then you would also be able, as a user, to easily switch between different Ivanti products, right? Here in my environment, there's only one product enabled, so to speak, for that user, but through this app switcher, which is also new, you'd be able to very quickly, switch between different tools. That makes it also a lot easier, right? So again, on the one hand, it does introduce some, modernization even today, while the rest of the Analyst UI is, pretty much the same that you're used to. So, those content screens here haven't really changed. But you can introduce a more novel navigation. And again, for us, it's also a first step, the same exact navigation we plan to use for our new Analyst UI, right? The other part that we also we already had modernized, as you know, is the dashboard, right? With dashboard v2, we actually implemented a more modern Angular-based dashboard experience. And again, that is also the only dashboard experience that we plan to take forward into the new Analyst UI, right? And so from that perspective, again, we also wanted to make sure that the dashboard, the new dashboard specifically, is working out for our customers. We know that we had received some feedback that certain items needed to be improved, and so over the release 2024.4 as well as the upcoming releases, we continue to invest in this dashboard v2 because again that's the one that will go forward with, right? From that perspective, just to highlight a few items here that we've done. First of all, I do want to call out that, and that was not a new feature of 2024.4, but we had introduced this earlier. But I do want to call out, once you have our AI capabilities licensed and enabled, users will see this Neurons AI button here. And what this does is basically it allows you through a text prompt to describe what kind of data you want to see in a dashboard widget. So let me see if I can do this here. Show number of incidents grouped by status. And then, based on such a text prompt, and you'll see in the documentation what type of prompts we support, the system will generate basically a widget that represents this information. So you don't have to go in and construct your query, etc. The system will basically go out and generate the corresponding query here. So the system is a bit slow here. Okay, for whatever reason. Let me try this again. If not, we'll continue here. Again, show number of incidents grouped by status. Seems there's something going on in the environment. Here. So again, that's the core idea. So again, the system based on the text prompt can generate a corresponding widgets, and then you can easily add that to your dashboard or create a new dashboard from it. Now, again, here you can further refine the query, so it's really conversational in that you can say, "Oh, only show me the top, 3 statuses, etc." I want to spend too much time on it because it was not really a 2024.4 feature. But I do want to call out that if you, again, have licensed and enabled this, then you'll have this additional capability, right? Now, what we have added as a new thing in 2024 is the ability to show, rich text content here in the dashboard table widgets. There was some limitation before. So now if any of your incidents has corresponding data, images, or a hyperlink, for example, you can use them also from the dashboard here, right? So that was one enhancement that we did in 2024.4. And then also what's important here is that, let me see my work, we added the capability to drag and drop widget elements when you're in an edit mode here. So let's say I wanted to add an additional row here, and I want to say, oh, it doesn't make sense that these two are next to each other. I want to really move this down to the lower area. You can generally rearrange the dashboards now through drag and drop. You just click on it and move things around, right? I can also move it back up here. So you can rearrange again your dashboard based on a drag and drop concept that was much more difficult before. That's something that we added in 2024, right? Of course, you have to drop it at the right place here. This again here, you can see that you move things around. then you'll save it. Go back to the full list here. My work. This is a dashboard where a user would see the entire work, and now you basically can use the full breadth of the screen for the service request and for the open task info, right? Another item that we introduced was the maximize option here. So this again allows you to use the full screen width to see all the columns. In some cases, that also allows you to, let me see if I can get to this. I pick admin dashboard. You can see here if you use certain charts with lots of options on the x-axis and you have only limited space here because you have two widgets in the same row, then this maximize option, for example, allows you to really see all the corresponding x-axis labels, right? So it just is a better way to understand the data here. Of course, you could also just rearrange the widgets on the dashboard if you feel like there's lots of data on there. It should probably be on its own row, so to speak, right? So these are some of the items, but again, it's just a reflection that we continue to invest in Dashboard V2, improving some of the capabilities for the upcoming release. For example, we'll have the clone option so that when you have a list of dashboards and you want to modify or clone one of these dashboards, in the future, we'll have that capability in the upcoming release 25.2. We plan to introduce that, and then we also plan to adjust some visuals, etc. So there's more to come in the dashboard space. You'll see that as part of the innovator preview for 25.2. We'll show that in more detail, but again, you can see that we continue to invest in it because, as stated, this is going to be our dashboard moving forward. And so also here, we recommend that you look into this, let us know if you still see any gaps, because this is, again, the technology platform for dashboards that we want to use moving forward. Right? So we talked about dashboard improvements. Again, we talked about this, as I stated, for 25.2, the April release, we plan to introduce cloning and some UX improvements. Localization overall is a topic for us. And then last but not least, a quick look ahead around the Analyst UI. So we talked about individual sections so far, like the navigation, like the dashboard. Again, these are components that we plan to use going forward. But now that we've been wrapping up or are wrapping up the self-service capability, we have started to shift our focus to the analyst experience, and we have started that actually back in the fall timeframe to start actually building out the core of the new Analyst UI. So I'll actually start with the lower portion here. One thing that we're building out is a completely new UI framework. Yes, it will have the same navigation here because that was already done in Angular. But in order to build a new UI, you basically need a completely new framework with the corresponding, tab navigation, etc. That's the first thing. And then in terms of content, we start out with the new grid view capability, so a more modernized version of the grid view. And we have that running now in the lab here, again, as part of 25.2. I'm sure you get the full preview. Now, in the April release, we don't plan to make this full GA yet, and part of the reason is this is such an essential component on the one hand, so we wanted to make sure that we have a baking period, so to speak, and want to collect feedback before we fully GA it. So we'll plan one cycle of beta status. The other part is that before we release this in GA, we do want to deliver a few additional capabilities that didn't quite fit into the box, so to speak, for the April release. As I stated, right, April release will do a lot of things in the platform to improve performance and stability. And so from that perspective, we had only a certain level of capacity for the UI work, and not everything fit into that box. And so as part of 25.2, 25.3, the Q3 release, when we make this GA, we do plan for some additional features before we make this fully GA. That again will be the first phase. Again, it will be the complete framework, the complete navigation, dashboard, and the grid experience. Once you double click on a specific or navigate into a specific record, let's say a specific incident or change, etc., then you would see the current view of that ticket, of that change, of that incident, etc. So the details view don't change in that release yet. That's the next thing we'll take up, that will update the corresponding individual ticket screens, and we're currently reviewing the designs we have, etc. So you see things are underway. It's very exciting to see, again, these things coming together. And as part of 25.2, you'll get, again, a glance into this new analyst experience. Initially, again, in a beta state, but we do plan then to give you access to it so that you can try it out and collect feedback. And then, plan to roll this out. Now, to finish my portion here, let me quickly go through some additional enhancements here. So one is the data import mapping rule capabilities. We did release that as part of our 2024.4 release. So here we'll give administrators more control over how they map data that comes from the discovery side into the system here. Should existing data be replaced or not be replaced, you just have more flexibility around configuring the system around it. And then last but not least, very quickly, a glance into the new carbon footprint tracking capability. Again, this is an exciting new capability that we released as part of 2024.4, but this is not part of the official ITAM product. I do want to call that out. It's a downloadable package on the Ivanti marketplace. And so from that perspective, from a support perspective, it is like a custom developed content. We just wanted to give you a pre-built package that allows you to show what you can do with this platform, pre-building a capability around carbon footprint tracking. Now, why did we do this? Most organizations, even though they generally have IT asset management practices, they often don't really have visibility into the IT carbon footprint, specifically for the hardware asset they have. That has implications around financial risk. I mean, it's not just the cost for the energy. That is a big factor. This may also involve, or have financial impact from an investor perspective, from an internal perspective. There may be potentially even penalties. Certainly, it's reputational damage, right? A lot of investors and internal employees are looking at what company is doing around reducing the carbon footprint. And so with our solution here, we address the needs for customers to be able to track this, providing the visibility into the carbon footprint, enable you to manage this efficiently, but then also eventually enable you to drive workflows. Now, the third part here is not really done out of the box. I don't want to call that out, but having the data basically enables you to do this. And so just to give you a quick glance into it. So once you download this from the marketplace and import in your environment, when you go to the product catalog, for example, you'll see that there's an additional tab here. Let me go to one of these items here. You'll see that there's an additional tab here. And let me find, not everything has data in here. Let me find one that has data. So here, for example, you see, we're tracking both the total carbon footprint information. Usually the manufacturers of these hardware devices are publishing this data. And so you can track that. By the way, we also provide a spreadsheet with out-of-the-box data that you can load in for standard hardware models, over 100 of them. And so you can see this information here. And then you can also see how much of that is one time, for the creation and the transport, that's usually the biggest part of it. In this case, 88% of that total carbon footprint is created through the manufacturing and the transport. And then the other part comes in through the actual usage of the hardware device. And so for that, you can enter the useful life cycle. And then, that determines the monthly carbon footprint in a kilogram CO2 equivalent, right? Now that is again for the hardware model, and usually again that data is the same for or per model. But then for the individual asset, you can certainly see that information as well. You wouldn't track this based on the individual asset, but you would be able to see the information. So similarly to what you see for the model, you can see the data here for an individual CI, asset CI, but you cannot modify it because, again, that data is usually tracked as part of the model, right? And then last but not least, what's important here is we also deliver predefined carbon footprint dashboards. Again, in my test system here, there's not too much information, but based on that information, you can basically see what your carbon footprint is by location, by org unit, etc. So we have the corresponding dashboard views that we deliver. Okay, with that, I wanted to hand it over to Alan. It took me a little bit longer here. Alan, you want me to continue to show the slides, or?
Yes, please continue to show the slides. And
Okay.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Alan Taylor coming to you live from the road, as it were, on our U.S. holiday. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I wanted to jump into some of the capabilities that we've delivered from an AI perspective. And we'll go through a number of things, but also, and what may be of interest to many of you, is what does it look like as we look ahead into Q2, into the second half of 2025? How are we going to apply intelligence into how end users work, how analysts work, how administrators work as well? As we know, AI is becoming ingrained in a number of our experiences across our products, and ITSM is no exception to that. And one of the first areas, really what we're doing, is in the area of incident correlation. We have taken a capability that we've introduced earlier in 2024 and really taken the feedback we've gotten from customers, from our sales engineers, and updated the UX for that. Now, this is part of our AI capability, and as these bullet points point out, the idea for incident correlation is to surface issues that are trending rapidly. In other words, when I was on the support desk, I'm talking to customers and taking a call. I wasn't putting everyone on hold to poll the analysts around me to see if they were happy to be logging the same type of ticket in real time. Reports are great, but they give you oftentimes delayed insight. An incident correlation is meant to, as this says, show you what's happening in more real time, drive attention to rising events so that you can more proactively address those issues. Now, Peter, I'm going to take the screen from you, if I may, real quick.
Sure.
And then I will stop sharing. We'll go back to the slides. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And part of incident correlation, as I mentioned, it is part of our AI capability. If you are subscribed to our AI functions, you will have this AI configuration hub visible in the left-hand navigation. Now, we understand customers may adopt different AI capabilities at different points. We've given you the ability to turn things on or off as your requirements dictate. And then some of them have deeper capabilities that you can edit and refine. But you'll see incident correlation there. And it's really designed to, as this says, group common issues together. So then you can go ahead and take action. Now, it is a workspace. So if you were to manage your top level tabs and go to add top level tab into that list, it'll say incident correlation. Grab it, click it, and away we go. So this is a role-based capability that you can deliver. And from here, it's going to do a number of different things. So if I just grab this top one, I can see how things are trending, how incidents being categorized. Do I have a parent as part of this cluster? How many incidents are tied to it? And then from there, I can dig into detail of this cluster, selecting one or more incidents as a parent, being able to see what those are, drive over to those incidents, and then be able to manage these in such a way as if I can more rapidly fix it, I can mitigate any risk to my organization and any impact to the user experience. And that's going to be key. So really, capability-wise is generally the same, but we've introduced a better navigation to make it easier to consume that, easier to take action. So that's kind of step one that's coming out here with that. And then from there, I did mention the AI Configuration Hub. We're updating this to start to give you a lot of statistics with regards to, well, how's my AI doing? Has it had an impact? That's the biggest thing. Everybody wants to adopt AI, but ultimately you need to understand the positive, or let's just say the impact it's had into your organization. So coming through here, we're going to put more and more KPIs into this dashboard to help you understand what does that look like for our organization. More configuration capability, especially in the area of incident summarization and knowledge article generation. You can control the creativity that AI will have as it creates said summary or said knowledge content. Obviously, if you wanted to be very explicit, very specific to the facts, you might move that slider a bit down a bit. But maybe you want it to be a little bit more creative and so forth, and create those things that maybe have more detail. Definitely going to be able to manage that. And then updates to that NLP dashboard widget that Peter showed, really within the context of contextual understanding of what the user is putting in. So they'll be able to understand the user, not just what the user is typing, but also who that person is. What role do they have? What data do they have access to? All of these things are going to come in here to generate very specific widgets, not just based on query, but within the context of the user itself. So look forward. You can always go look in the 2024.4 documentation with putting it out on help.ivanti.com. You're going to get a lot of information from AI there. And of course, there's sites on Ivanti.com. But one of the things we're coming with 25.2 is an update to our ticket classification capability. If you are familiar with this, you may recall that there's a bit of dependency on the Ivanti Neurons Machine Learning Lab, that platform. So in addition to leveraging it within ITSM, we needed a corresponding Neurons platform to help with that. We are removing that dependency so that ticket classification is 100% within ITSM in the AI Configuration Hub. You'll still train it the same way. You'll still leverage your own ticket data to train this classification model, but it's completely in ITSM 100%. And the team has done some really cool things with this. As you go in, turn it on, click the pencil, and step through learning it. So this is really intended to take away a lot of the human decision points when logging a ticket, right? We, of course, have templates that you could apply, but those are situational. This is intended to say, out of everything that's been categorized, how am I going to look forward? Then you can use that as the basis for automation, for routing, and more workflow. And that's 25.2 for sure. And there's a couple of slides as you cycle through what that configuration is going to look like. We talked about the correlation update. We've talked about ticket classification. I may have duplicated my slides as I am there. So what is the second half hold for us when it comes to intelligence into Ivanti Neurons for ITSM? Now, some of these are work in progress as we think prototypes and so forth. And some of it is really thinking about what do we need to be doing and how rapidly can we do that. So some of the things we're looking at is localization. If it's an AI localization, so if I'm doing a dashboard widget and I type it in French or German or Italian or Spanish or English, I am generating the widget. Localization is something we're looking at. Something that I'm personally excited about is real-time translation. So let's say I have an end user who submitted a ticket and they typed it in French, we'll say. And I, as an analyst, I'm sitting in my sim and I don't know French. I know enough to be dangerous. That's not going to matter. We want to be able to translate in real time what they put in. So I, as an analyst, maybe could type what I'm looking for in English, because that's what I know. But when that end user goes to look at it, this is really going to change the way I think users use the tool, the way they collaborate, and so forth. So we're not pushing everybody to use, of course, still common language is prevalent, but we don't want to have to make that a must, if that makes sense. And I think this is really going to be key as we start to break down those language barriers. More augmentation from a self-service perspective, virtual assistants, adding AI to the Teams bot to build on what we've already delivered. And then from an administration perspective, if you're familiar with expressions, you'll know that there's a bit of an art form, if you will. You kind of got to know it, but we want to break that barrier down. It's like, what if you didn't need to know it? What if you just type in natural language what you want, and the system builds that and says, all right, here's your expression, and you might confirm it and review it. We all know the little disclaimers AI has, but let's take away some of the effort of needing to know that. But of course, you can type away and off you go with expressions, but more and more on the administration side. And then as Peter showed, we want to be able to do something similar when people are trying to find data. Right now, today, you'll be familiar with saved searches. Kind of got to go in, if I've been granted the permission to in the first place, go in, create a saved search, understand what I'm looking for, and so forth. Let's break that barrier down. Just put a search bar at the top that says, I am looking for, all incidents in my region that are going to breach our SLA in the next 30 days. Type it, find it. There's my list data. And now I can begin to act on it. If you were to try to build that saved search, it's going to take you a little bit. But if I can just type it out, that's going to be really a game changer when it comes to tracking data down. And then if I like it, and it is something I use all the time, I can, as this says, refine it and save it. And now it's something that I can continue to use repeatedly. So next slide. Just looking at the time and so forth, I believe that's all of my portion. Of course, love the feedback. They're like, hey, Alan, all of those bullet points sound good. We think you should do it in the following order based on importance to you, our customer. And I think that's a huge data point for me as I and the team manage through AI capability to understand what I think might be a big game changer isn't necessarily. And that's where I love, whether it's in the chat, and many of you know me, shoot me an email. You're happy to do that and be like, hey, AI augmented administration sounds good, but we're actually pretty good on that. If you can do the analyst and the self-service stuff first, we would prefer that, or whatever it might be. That's going to be key. Huge benefit. So, yep. Next slide over to the summary. What do we got there? There you go. There's that 24.4 release scope. We've got a lot of good information through community, the Innovators platform for sure, and product documentation for all of these. And one nav, I think, is really going to bring that in. And then as the Analyst UX evolved over 2025, so much more to come. But self-service dashboards and so forth are really going to be that. And then, of course, you saw carbon footprint. There you go. Get your mobile phones out. Come on, I'll give you a minute. Everybody fumble around, grab your phone, grab that QR code, and please give us your feedback. This is, of course, product-related feedback. that you can tell us how from a product perspective, but this is really looking holistically. Was your sales experience good? Engagement with different teams, product, and all of it. We really want to understand your experience. So please get on there, grab that code, and let us know. That's how we improve to make your experience as our customer better. We can leave that up. I don't know what the next slide is, but or if you've already done it and you want to go back and say, well, actually, I did give them 4 stars, so now I'm going to want to do 5. You can. Good news. You're able to jump in, log in, hit my reviews. You can see reviews that you've come in and make appropriate edits. I think that might be it.
Yep, this is it. Thanks again from my side as well. More to come.